Hello, my name is John Cornicello, and I welcome you to my series of live interactive photo conversations. You can find the schedule at cornicello.com/conversations for dates and times of upcoming shows and for links to previous conversations. A couple of programming notes. On Monday with Rachel Short, we're going to start at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And then there will not be any conversations on May 27th, May 31st, and June 3rd as I'll be traveling. Let's see, we'll start again on June 7th with Blaine Hirsumu in Japan. Today, my guest is Steve Krongard. Now living in Utah, Steve started out as a commercial photographer in New York City, opening his studio in 1981 after having been a studio manager at Peter Turner Studio for 3 years. So today we're going to talk about those years from 1981 to 2001, reflect on some selected images and the assignments they generated. So please welcome Steve Krongard.
Hello, John. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here.
Good to see you.
Thank you. So I'm going to just go through a variety of pictures, kind of describing where I've been. My big thing has always been trying to make pictures for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found that those pictures led to commercial success. And anytime I tried to make pictures that were like steered toward, oh, I think this will sell or that should sell, they never worked. It always had to be something that I really felt. So we're looking at a barn. I was studying architecture in Boston, and I needed a camera as a tool to document sites and things I was working on. And I just fell in love with the camera, as a lot of us, most of us here probably did. And within a year, I considered. Okay, hold on one second. So, I started thinking maybe photography is more for me than architecture. And one of the reasons was I just thought I might be better at it. So in my 5th year of architecture school, I hitchhiked across the country, and I had a Canon FTB, I think it was. And I believe I had a roller Kodachrome in it that had 24 frames, which they used to make in those days. So, and I was just making pictures for myself and having fun and traveling across the country. And I traveled across the country with this guy, Lee Waldman, who was an assistant to a photographer, John Van Ness, in Boston. And we just talked photography as we hitched across the country. And, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I made some pictures on that trip that I still really care for, this being one of them at Big Sur. And I, just made the decision that summer that I was going to drop out of school and try to get a job as an assistant. So I was living in Boston at the time. This is the Boston Public Gardens. And Lee had moved to California. Van Ness, who he used to work for, needed an assistant. I got a job with Van Ness. I spent the next year and a half learning at the hands of this, or whatever the saying is, the feet of this master guy. Could do everything. He's just an unbelievably talented and sweet guy. And he paid for all my film that I wanted to shoot. He paid for all the prints I wanted to make. And I just wandered around with a camera, just shooting things that struck my fancy. And after a year and a half with Van Ness, I decided to move to New York. It just seems like, to me, that's where the great photographers were. So this is me the day after I moved to New York, and bell bottoms and all. The day before I'd moved to New York, and I called up Richard Avedon studio looking for work, and they told me to send them a resume and call back in 2 weeks. So I called up Hero Studio, whose work I just loved, and they said I could come by the next day. And I called Pete Turner, whose work I also loved, and they said come on over. So I did that, and met Ted Kaufman, the studio manager. They hired me to go to Washington with them the next day. So here we were. Ted was doing sample shots, trying to figure out where we would shoot this guy. Ted Brophy, who was the chairman of GTE, he was a big time guy, and we got access to the Capitol building. And the plan for that shoot, which was the next day, Pete came in that night, was that Pete and Ted Kaufman, the studio manager, would shoot him outside in a location like this. I was supposed to set up lights at the Senate caucus room, and I had a half an hour, and Ted said, make sure you have a Polaroid ready for me when I get there. So they dropped me off at the Senate. Immediately I ran into trouble. They wanted, the security police wanted to open my cases to see was inside, which is completely reasonable. But Ted had given me the wrong combination to the cases. They were Halliburton cases. They were the beautiful new Halliburton cases. And, you know, the half an hour that I had turned into 20 minutes and then 15. And finally, a Capitol security officer gave me a crowbar and I busted the cases open. They looked inside. I got up to the Senate caucus room and I set up the lights, but I didn't have a chance to make a Polaroid. And Ted came in. He's a great guy, but he got pissed. Where's my Polaroid? And I was like, Ted, you gave me the wrong combination to the case. And he looked at the cases. They were a mess all over the ground. So anyway, we became friends. He realized, you know, I didn't tell Pete. He realized I had his back. And I went, and then Ted pretty quickly left to, that wasn't supposed to happen. Ted pretty quickly left and I became studio manager for Pete. And we did an amazing amount of jobs and I met incredible people. This was a gig I was assisting at. I was actually studio manager, shooting for Kohler. We had the spa on the ground. We had it wired through the little cracks in the dry lake bed. There were like 15 or 18 of us on this crew. We had trucks. And, you know, I just learned so much doing these shoots. And also, it was just so valuable to meet so many people. So you have in this picture, that's the client looking through the camera. That's Pete wearing the black t-shirt on the left. And on the right is Lee McElfresh, who I met in LA while I was casting for the shoot. And he became my best friend, my best man at my wedding. Excuse me. Pete introduced me to Francoise and Douglas Kirkland, the great photographer Douglas Kirkland and his incredible wife. In fact, Francoise introduced me to Lee. So, you know, this was just really an incredible opportunity.
I remember that majestic tripod with the double sidearm rig.
Yes, that was a fantastic tripod, and I
had one of those.
I had multiple versions of them, but that outrigger that you can see the cameras on was really a great piece of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, while I was shooting for Pete, I just would shoot for myself. And a big thing with Pete that really worked to my advantage was he liked to shoot sunsets. He didn't like to shoot at sunrise because at sunrise you get up and it's dark and it's very hard to set up a shot and it's hard to know where you are. And, you know, we didn't have photo pills in those days, so you couldn't like predict exactly where the sun was coming up. You know, we had a good idea. So, you know, so I'd be on the road with Pete and I'd be shooting for myself and I'd be making, you know, just pictures that suited me. So in those days, there were stock agencies who would take your existing pictures and sell them. And it was a good source of income. You know, things have changed dramatically in that field, but a lot of the pictures that I made for myself ended up being stock pictures that had value to me. And this was a Holiday Inn we were staying at. We just got there and I was with actually an art director from England, Barry McGlone, was shooting with Pete. And, you know, as I came up to it, he said, you know, a lot of people, he just came out shooting with me. And he said, a lot of people have shot this kind of scene before, so you have to find a way to try to make it your own. And, you know, I've sort of taken that to heart in a lot that I shoot, you know. Wendover, Nevada, another sunrise with Pete. And curiously, I now live about 2 hours from the scene, which has changed dramatically. And in those days, when I rented a car, I used to want a car with a dark car, so in case I didn't like the foreground, I could reflect on the roof, which we see here.
Yeah.
And, you know, another thing we used to do to get that blue was shoot Type A Kodachrome, which is made for shooting indoors with tungsten light, but at the magic hour, it just kind of amplified the blue that naturally occurs in the sky.
So you're primarily a 35mm shooter?
Almost totally. I mean, when my studio got going, occasionally clients would insist on shooting larger formats, and I did kind of own a 4x5 camera, but to me, it was always just most natural to shoot 35. Even when later on I did still lifes, I still shot 35. And, you know, once again, just wandering on the road, this is outside Reno. It became a stock shot. I used these pictures for samples. When I opened my studio, I just, you know, that became my portfolio. This is when I was still assisting Pete. We did a gig in England for British Airways. And
Steve, can I interrupt real quick? The prior shot, what was the film stock you used on that one?
this shot,
Yes.
well, I was Kodachrome all the way, so it probably 25, but maybe 64.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Pete always believed in being comfortable when you shoot. We would bring shooting blankets on location if we're outside. In this case, this is from my hotel room, and Pete made sure we had the rooms with the best view when we got to London for this shoot. And, I was just playing with multiple imaging because Pete was a guy who, although he could make an incredible straight shot right out of camera, also was known for manipulating his pictures. And, I learned a lot of techniques for doing that.
Yeah, when I think of Pete, I often think of the Honeywell Repronar.
Yes, he had one, and he had it rigged out so you wouldn't even recognize it. And then he later moved to more sophisticated computer duping machines.
Mm-hmm.
One of which was a Marin Carroll, and I owned one. It was a computerized machine that would let you run 100 feet of film through and then perfectly pin register that film, roll it back, and add another element to the picture. So
Wow.
an incredible machine. And it became basically worthless as we got into the digital world. Here's another sunrise we're looking at, and it's just Pete didn't want to shoot the sunrises. He went to Stonehenge with an idea of the picture he wanted. We got there and he walked right up to the spot he wanted to shoot. And he had an incredible knack for doing that. Just sensing where the right place to be is. And, I can sometimes see that. And other times I kind of struggle thinking, where's the picture in this scene? And it's when I've taught workshops, I've always tried to get my students to really think about, when you look at a scene, there's so many different ways you can shoot it. You can shoot it wide angle, you can shoot it telephoto, you can shoot it looking up, looking down. What's the picture? What's the meaning of the scene? And what's the best way to capture it? What's the film? What's the color? But on occasion, I'll come to a scene, I'll see it, and it's just the greatest feeling. And other times you just have to work it. I think all photographers have been in situations where you're whether shooting a person or you just need to work it. And, living in New York City, it's just a photographer's playground. You walk down those streets and you get light zooming down the avenues, and you get these incredible plays of light. And you make pictures that really, the city changes so much that in some cases, not that this is such an amazing, important scene, but this shot doesn't exist anymore. I don't know if the building exists, but the view is completely blocked. And, this was across the street from the apartment I was renting, but, just day, night, there's always stuff. And, living in New York was just, most of my friends were photographers. We would take our cameras out and we would just walk the streets looking for pictures. 20 millimeter, put it right on the ground. So I don't think we need that. The motion that I kind of started seeing in a lot of my personal pictures, I started getting into professionally. So this was my first professional assignment. I was in Hawaii with Pete. We were shooting men's bathing suits actually for Penthouse, and he was headed back, and I was going to stay there for a couple of weeks to shoot for myself. Excuse me. And I realized that that Day in the Life of Australia was taking place the following week. So I had met Rick Smolin. He had asked Pete to be on the project, and Pete wasn't able to make it or whatever. But I called Rick to beg him to let me on the project. And I called him in Australia, and I'd met him, but I'd met him for an hour. And Francoise Kirkland answered the phone. She was in Australia with Douglas helping organize the project. And I couldn't believe it because I'd gotten to know her fairly well working with Pete's studio. So she put me through to Rick, and Rick invited me out on the project. He said, there's one thing, I have one assignment I need done, and it's important, but I don't have it filled yet. I need somebody to shoot the airports of Sydney and Melbourne and the airplanes. And I was like jumping up and down. This was like right in my wheelhouse. I've been shooting cars and I've been shooting buses and trucks just for the fun of it. So it was an amazing experience to get to Australia and meet all these incredible photographers and to be considered part of that group, which I really was not. Excuse me. So anyhow, this was in Melbourne, Trans-Australian Airlines, which doesn't exist anymore. I was riding on the tow truck, bringing this thing out from the hangar. You know, as we all who shot film know, there's no way of like testing this motion, how it's going to work. You can't look at the back of the camera. So that started my day. Just pictures, people moving through the airport, reflections. You know, I didn't go to photo school, but I'm thinking reflections, silhouettes, the kind of things that I motion, that I, you know, gesture, which, you know, was never really my big thing until recently, but those are the things that I would look for in my pictures. And this was a, you know, they let me ride in the cockpit on a shuttle between Sydney and Melbourne. The pilots were fantastic for me, maybe not for the passengers, because they took us down right on cloud level. We just bounced along the clouds. And, you know, for my first assignment, it was extremely successful. I got a bunch of pictures in the book. This was the title page. And I would get up every morning and just go shoot for myself. And, you know, for me at that point, it was the symbols. You know, I'm in Sydney. What's the obvious target? The Opera House. And when I came back to New York, a picture like this was currency for me. And I had shot a lot for myself. And this became a sample, and it became a cover of Travel and Leisure. And just having the pictures from that experience in Australia sort of helped propel me to get my own studio going. You know, just the Opera House from every level. I had met a friend, actually the guy who assisted Pete and I, Roy Emerson, a really brilliant photographer from New Zealand, who I called up. I said, I'm in Australia. He said, come on over, as though it was like right next door. But down there, it is pretty much like it's right next door. So I spent a month with Roy, traveling around New Zealand and photographing. It was just, you know, my first assignment. I really hadn't got my studio going at all. So I was really fortunate to have the time to be able to travel and shoot for myself. And I was fortunate to have Roy, who had shot for Air New Zealand, kind of, you know, we jumped in his Volkswagen Bug and we drove around the country. This is Lake Tekapo. My wife, Jody Buren, the photographer, and I went back there 3 or 4 years ago. And I wanted to recreate this picture, or at least stand where I shot it. And I couldn't, for the life of me, even get close to imagining how I made this picture. I couldn't find a spot with that angle. I mean, the trees and all have gotten bigger, but it was just amazing to me. And it's sort of a, you know, there's this whole thing that a lot of photographers have heard where if you're at a spot and you think there's a picture, you got to stay there. You just got to go with it, because it just may not be there in whether it's 20 years or 5 minutes. And, you know, New Zealand just gives you an opportunity to see things that I'd never seen before. And it's kind of the beauty of being a photographer. You know, you meet people you never would have met. You see things you never would have seen. I mean, I think a lot of us get involved in photography. It's like a love affair. It's like a lifestyle. You know, I never met anyone who said to me, I'm going to get into photography because I want to make a lot of money. It just, that person, I don't think exists. So I'm just going to run through a few of the other day in the life books that I worked on. And it was, you know, I can honestly say that the Day in Life of Australia project changed my life. It just did. It opened up so many doors. I met so many people. So then this was a Day in Life of Canada. And for this, and I don't have a picture here, but Rick asked me to shoot the group photo of all the photographers. So that was like terrifying, but also kind of an honor. And, you know, this is they were mostly photojournalists. And most of them would probably be horrified that I asked this guy to get out this outfit and put it on, just because I like the red pipe and I like the silver suit. And this is also, I was on a North Sea oil rig for Day in the Life of Canada, and I shot it in black and white. And then I rephotographed it in color, and it just gave it a completely different feel. And I was influenced by the Fleetwood Mac album covers that Herbert Worthington shot, where he shot them in black and white, but then he convert it to color, and the blacks and the whites are just, it's still black and white, but they're different. I did some stupid things, probably way too many. I'm being hoisted off the oil rig onto a supply ship. No safety belt. They told me if I fell in the water, it was over. I'm wearing cowboy boots because I thought they would look good, but they were stupid to shoot in. I'm just holding on for dear life. And in this day in the life of the Soviet Union, once again, I'm shooting my assignment, but I'm thinking about, what are the symbols? I mean, seeing this building, to me, just standing there is incredible. And this is from a day in the life of Italy. And I had an assignment to photograph an accordion factory. And at this point, I was intimidated from day one, but I was very intimidated by a lot of the photographers. And I'd now seen a few books, and I'd seen these people were catching really human moments that just was not my thing. I was more like, if there's a person, they're going to screw up the picture more than like, I gotta get their emotion or whatever. So Jody, who's my wife, who I mentioned before, was my girlfriend at that point. I was saying, boy, accordion factory, it just sounds industrial. And she said to me before I left, don't be intimidated, but just go do your thing. Make a picture. There's like a Steve Krongard picture, which, that's graphic and colorful. And, I'm the kid who used to line up all his trucks at night before I went to bed as a little kid. So, that really helped me, because I got to the accordion factory and it was a little concrete bunker in the forest. It was toxic smelling from the glue they were using. It was hideous, and I didn't want to be there. And there was an incredibly gorgeous this forest nearby, and this guy was an accordion tester, and he did test them outside. So I just kind of moved him into position. And this was also, I was going through a little bit of a soft focus theme at that point, although the picture they ran in the book, they did not go with soft focus. Just, buzzing through the day in life. This is a day in life in the Soviet Union. That clock seems surreal. This is about as close as I was getting to shooting people back in those days, as kind of little objects on the beach, but it was just another one of those. And day in the life of Ireland, China, thanks to Rick Smolin, he really got me out seeing the world, and it was an amazing experience. This was after the shoot. I went to Guilin to shoot for myself during the project. And this is embarrassing, but I'm showing it anyway. There's me in my studio. We're back in New York. I'm smoking a cigarette. I know, I know, but I did. So there it is. And, I was looking at this thing, and there are so many things in this picture that now are on my iPhone. I mean, it's just incredible. I've got, we'll start with my telephone, my stereo, my music, up here on the wall, my receipts. I got an answering machine back in the corner. I got a Rolodex. I've got a calendar. I mean, it's just, looking at this, it's just incredible how much has changed. And that has been pretty much a constant through my career. It's just been changed, whether it was shooting editorial work, which I started doing a lot of, but then got into annual reports and, not to mention autofocus, digital, and we'll get into all that later. But so this was the New York City Marathon. And
at the Verrazano Bridge?
That's correct. And I had a party at my studio that night, and it kind of went a long time, and we realized the marathon was that day. So a few of us piled into a car. We parked near it. We crossed police lines just by being polite. There was a bus on the bridge. Can't do that now. There's a bus on the bridge for press only. We walked onto the bus. They said, "You press?" We said, "Yes." The doors closed. All of a sudden, we were at the middle of the Verrazano Bridge. Since we were last on, we were first up, and there was a very small elevator. They took us up to the top of the Verrazano Bridge. Things have obviously changed. And in this case, it was a very flat gray day, and I took 2 blue filters and I brought them in from either side, holding blue against the water, the gray water, just to give it some color. And added some contrast. You know, it's going to be a constant for the next however long this thing lasts, folks. I'm walking around, just making pictures for myself, looking for that sweet light. And that led to people seeing those pictures and hiring me to do, this was for a jewelry campaign. They draped watches over these buildings. So they gave me a bunch of buildings to shoot. You know, this one, there was no location scout. It was me, and I was walking down the street and I saw the Chrysler building. I looked behind me and there was an office building, and I walked up and knocked on the door. Can I shoot the Chrysler building from your balcony? No problem. And I went back a bunch of times. They were very nice people. And then this was these personal pictures, whatever lead to, this is a campaign I did for MCI. And the theme was the world was tied together with networking. So I had to shoot about 10 or 12 buildings in the city. I shot from helicopters. And then they took out the buildings and they made like a world of New York City buildings as though everybody was connected. And then I think they went out of business, MCI, but it wasn't my fault. I'm on the World Trade Center. I am, this was a story I pitched for Fortune, just inside the World Trade Center. And I'm afraid I don't have more pictures to show, but I do like this one of me up there on the 90th floor. And you can see I am wearing a safety harness. So getting better as I go along. I was flying to Singapore for an assignment and stopped in San Francisco for a night and just found this great location in the Berkeley Hills, and the fog was rolling in. And then to Singapore, where I did a variety of pictures, many of which are things that I just, I love this stuff. I didn't turn it purple. It kind of was purple itself for some reason, but I would have if I thought it worked right. And this, more shooting for myself, more assembly. This is, although this whole take is not chronological, this I did put together on the computer. It's these incredible cottages in Provincetown, and they were boarded up for the winter, and just made for the most amazing scene. So, and if there's any questions along the way, I'm totally into hearing and answering them. I taught workshops at the main photo workshop for many years. I don't know how many, 15, perhaps 20. And, we used to do field trips. We take the students out, and they were always a blast. And they always wanted me to shoot to see what I would come up with. And it was just, I always felt pressure that I had to make a better picture than my students. So this is Pemaquid Light in Maine, and I've gone back there many times. And, if you shoot this straight into the sunset, the lighthouse becomes a silhouette and the rocks become a silhouette, and it's just, you see the glow in the sky. So I sort of went back to what I learned in the darkroom, which was you could dodge an area. And I held my hand over, just dodging the top of this frame till the sky got darker and the foreground got lit up a little bit. And I won that one, but it always amazed me the quality of the students that would come up to the main workshops.
And this lighthouse is in Maine, Paul is asking?
It's in Pemaquid Point, Maine. It's a wonderful, beautiful spot. And part of what I used to do was travel on my own and shoot stock, because I was represented by the Image Bank, who've since been bought by Getty, and that industry is close to disappeared. But I would find if I took an international trip, I could come home and give the pictures to my agent. I wouldn't give them the pictures, I would duplicate them and give them to my agent. And it would generally pay for the trip. I didn't get to see Hell's Bloody Devils or The Hunter, but I did get to, I did get to make a picture reflecting off the back of a car, which you can tell is pretty dated just by the fact it's got that vinyl thing around the rear window. I don't think they're doing that too much anymore. And then on a family vacation, get up early, there's a bus, boom, shoot the bus. So somebody saw this picture and hired me to do, not this picture actually, but it was an assignment for Town and Country. And it was comparing what's better, a Porsche or a Corvette. So we got to the location early, which I always do, because for me, if I'm on time, it's like being late. Drives my family crazy. And the Porsche was brought on a flatbed truck, and we unloaded it and waiting, and then this fog was beautiful. So we rolled the flatbed truck behind the Porsche, and there's a little bit of an incline, so it's down below it and you don't see it. And this is me shooting for myself before I do the assignment, and I like this a whole lot more than the picture I made for those guys. I ended up taking some really simple things and complicating them, and I would drive my assistants crazy at some point. But I was hired I did a campaign for Daewoo, and I was hired to shoot this earth mover, and they supplied the earth mover. And this doesn't even show it. If it was a horizontal picture, you would see, probably 9 or 10 lights stretching out, multiple generators.
Speedotron packs.
I'm sorry?
Bunch of Speedotron packs.
Yeah, they're heavy, but they put out a lot of light in those days.
Yeah, 36 pounds. I still have one sitting here.
Oh, you do? Yeah, I just got rid of mine finally because no one wanted it, and I was afraid to turn it on because I thought it might blow up. Although nothing against Speedotron, they make good things.
Yeah.
The old ones are extremely heavy. Anyway, this is the kind of thing when I did this kind of assignment, I do everything I can just to ensure that I get a picture. So, the earth mover is lit, the ground is lit, but the dirt is warmed up just a little bit. Lighting the foreground lets me darken the background a little bit to get that good rich sky. It took us all day to light this and get this thing organized, but there it was. So there's the Concorde on liftoff, and I got hired for a campaign for Dunhill cigarettes, which I know. But in those days, actually cars and cigarettes were the campaigns you wanted to get. And this was an incredible opportunity. So the theme was now arriving in America. So we took a crew of 5 of us down to Miami International because the client couldn't help us get access to the Concorde. We hung around, we met people, and we finally met some airport person who gave us access to the end of the runway. This was when Concorde was flying from Miami International, but they were only flying like twice a week. So the first day we saw it come out toward us, and then it took a right and went to another. And we were on radio contact with British Airways people, but it took off a different runway, and we watched it fly off into the distance. So we stayed another few days, and this was not autofocus, this is manual focus. This is 1200, and I had an 800 set up too, and I spent hours before the plane took off just practicing focus at liftoff, just practicing. And this shot proved to be, in terms of stock sales and income, my most successful shot. And we ended up moving the plane so it's directly over the middle of the runway, although I don't have that frame here. Retoucher Doug Nobiletti, who we did a lot of work with, moved that plane for me. This was actually the day where it was coming right at us, and we thought, oh God, this is going to be amazing. And it veered off and took a different runway, I guess because of wind conditions probably. And we just, hung around the airport, and boy, when you get access like that, it's fun. And this was just such a beautiful machine to photograph. It just was really a treat.
So what year was this? The airport?
That's a very hard question, but I'm going to say 84, 85. But I could be wrong.
So before high security.
Oh yeah, many of the things that we did, crossing police lines to shoot the New York Marathon, or being allowed to stand at the end of the runway by some guy who just drove us out there because he liked us. Can't do that anymore. The other target for this shoot was the QE2, and the same theme. They wanted arriving in New York Harbor, now arriving in America. So hired a tugboat, came in the fog the first morning, and we had this film. It was a new film stock. It was an Ektachrome 400 that you could push 2 stops, which to me was just magic that you could get up to 1600 ISO. So I had that, and then I had a 24-14, I think, on the camera, and I had a gyro stabilizer, which was this huge, heavy object that supposedly stabilized the camera, but I never really had good luck with it.
Was that one of those big gray ones that hung under the camera?
Yes, it did. And
Yeah,
I guess they work, but it just, on a ship, on a boat.
Yeah, they were hard to control because even if you wanted to tilt it slightly yourself, it would fight you.
Yes.
Steve,
That
I
is
want to,
correct.
I want to
So-
give a little bit of trivia. Can you
Yeah.
go back to the SST, the Concorde? The one before. Keep going. Next one. This image was on a giant billboard for BOAC as you came out of the Queens Midtown Tunnel into Manhattan. Now, when you come out of the Queens Midtown Tunnel, you have to make a left or a right, or you go into a brick wall. When that image was first put up at the Queens Midtown Tunnel, I mean, it had to be at least 50 feet. It was enormous. People coming out of the Queens Midtown Tunnel and saw this image could not take their eyes off of it. And there were a lot of accidents going into the wall, or people that were supposed to go left instead were going to the right. It was hysterical.
Okay,
But that image became a classic.
So for those of you who don't know, that is Michael Newler speaking.
Oh,
You can tell by the voice and also the.
they know.
Yeah, we know, Michael.
All right.
We all know. We all know.
And I deny that this image caused traffic accidents.
And Elizabeth saying she agrees 1985 because she worked at the airport and the windows would shake when that would take off.
It's just a beautiful machine. Very sad. Had a very sad ending. Anyhow, I love these pictures, but the people who hired me, Dunhill, thought this kind of was not an image you wanted to match with cigarettes. It's kind of brown and sickly looking, like tar or nicotine. And they just, and then I got the tugboat driver right in front of this, which he thought I was crazy, but he did anyway. And this is the clean kind of shot they wanted. They removed the smoke coming out of the chimney, but they wanted nice white lines and bright colors. So,
By the way, there's a Concorde that's sitting about 2 miles where I'm sitting right now.
There's what? I'm sorry?
A Concorde.
There's a Concorde sitting about 2 miles from where I'm sitting right
And
now.
is that in New York City? Down by the
Barbados.
No, in Barbados.
Oh, really?
There's one at Grantley Adams Airport in Barbados.
Huh. Funny that it went there.
There's another in Seattle.
Well, they used to fly a lot of them here.
I see. Interesting. So I was doing a mix of advertising and annual reports and a little magazine stuff. That really kind of petered out, although I have some that I'll show in a little while, I think. But this was a thing for wheat and a chemical, I guess, that fought the fungus that occurs when there's fog in wheat. And, we brought out lights and generators and we lit up the wheat, and it's a fun thing. That's very wide angle. This is fisheye. I've never really loved fisheyes, but I had this assignment to shoot deep water drilling. So it just seemed as though exaggerating the curve of the earth with a fisheye lens seemed like a good idea. And then we got that beautiful little layer of clouds right at the horizon. And, just because a lot of the types of work I was doing was landscapey type things, ended up in a lot of helicopters, and I always tried to set aside time at the end of a shoot to shoot for myself. If it's in New York, it's the Trade Towers or the cityscape or the Statue of Liberty. This, believe it or not, was for an annual report. They sent me to Niagara Falls to shoot Niagara Falls. That would never happen now. Just there's so many existing pictures that you can buy for like 30 cents on the internet that that stuff just doesn't happen. But and I crawled to a place to get this that probably probably wasn't worth it, the risk I took to get the shot I got. And then, I was always amazed. People would see landscapes and hire me to do still lifes. And I did a lot of still lifes. This was shot on Polaroid film. Polaroid made a film for a while. I don't know how your resolution is, but it's made of lines, and we coded all these things, and we did about 10 of these for a real estate brochure for the design firm.
Is that the 35 millimeter Polachrome?
This is 35 millimeter Polachrome, yeah.
Yeah.
Was hired by design firm Carbone Smolin, who were just Ken Carbone and Leslie Smolin were really ahead of the curve in what they were doing, and met Leslie through the day in the life through Rick. I've never been a big schmoozer, networking, never my thing, but you're out there long enough and you meet enough people that it's you get in the door, and then you have to run with it from there.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that Polachrome, did that make a negative and a chrome?
Just made a chrome.
Hmm.
Or if it made a negative, I didn't realize it and threw them all away.
No, I don't
Pretty
remember
sure
it making a
that,
negative.
It's just
A negative and thus a print.
It was fun stuff.
It did not make a negative.
Okay.
It was
Thanks, Barbara.
transparency, but it was a weird kind of color lenticular goofy thing.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I used some film that made a print and a chrome, and the quality wasn't that good.
well, there were Polaroid films. Was it type 505 or something? It was a 55.
The type 55
Oh my
positive,
God,
negative.
most beautiful negatives. It was just,
That
Mhm.
was a gorgeous film.
it was really amazing, right? 4.5.
505 was gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, I still have 6 Polaroid holders, hoping one day someone makes the film again, but
Well,
I don't think it's going to happen.
it's probably unlikely that they'll get the quality that you used to get from type 55. That was
Yeah.
really gorgeous. Anyway, annual reports, you get sent somewhere, sometimes you had 2 or 3 locations in a day. You had to get in, take out your wide angle lens. This is remote data access. I guess the old version of the cloud. And
Mhm.
Bristol Myers annual report, the typical family. This was for VF Corp, but the hard thing for me is to get 4-year-olds all smiling, and I would love to know what I said to them, but there was retouching, but nowhere near as much. Nowadays, if you need to change heads on subjects, which I don't like to do and don't do unless I'm a desperate man, you had to get the shot in one frame. So this was an assignment for Geo magazines. This was really fun. It was an article on odd dogs. So this is a puppy Shar-Pei, and all puppies are cute. Hungarian Puli, I spent a day with this dog. It was just the greatest dog, and they didn't really have to do much to make it. Just point your camera in that direction. Another Shar-Pei. Each of these dogs had their unique characteristics. This was a Chinese crested who I shot in my studio. And that day, there was something wrong with my shutter, and it cut off the bottom of the pictures. But I was shooting against black, and it actually worked to my advantage. It just floated the Poochie right in the middle of the frame. And that's one of the most amazing things about photography. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes mistakes can lead you to a good place, but you're always learning. I mean, I'm still learning, and I've been doing it for a long time now, and it's just pretty wonderful to have those things happen. So this was the Hungarian Puli again, and we built a set. And once again, we didn't have photo pills, so we didn't know where the sun was setting, but we had a pretty good idea. And we built a table in the owner's backyard, and we put black plexi on it. And I'd shot a bunch of dogs by this point, and they weren't really cooperative. They just, no matter how well trained they were, they weren't. So we lit this dog. The owner came out. She put him on the table. I said, sit. He sat there for like 20 or 30 minutes, the entire sunset. He was the most incredible dog. He just, it was fun to work with. And then on the way home from one of my dog shoots, we passed, the sunset was taking place. It was like, oh my God, we got to shoot this. I would like to have a subject, and the subject became my car. It was a rental. That's me setting up a camera, jumping in my car, driving down the pier, so there'll be just a little more activity in the picture, a little more life, driving back, closing the shutter, which don't get a whole lot of shots at these, but. And then, you know, the hardest part of this was getting the permit to shoot here. It was for Digital Equipment Corp, which is a computer company that doesn't really exist anymore. Actually, the art director had asked for a black truck. We found a black truck. They canceled the morning of the shoot, and we spent half the day coming up with another black truck, which can't really see it's that black. So, you know, I mentioned earlier, no matter what I'm doing, I'm always cutting out time to shoot for myself. So sometime in the 80s, I got asked to present the Australian Photographer of the Year award to the Australian Photographer of the Year. And all I had to do was come down to an award ceremony, do a 2-week TV and radio sort of promotion tour for the Australian Photographers Association. So they gave me a business class ticket, which I turned in for 2 economy tickets. And my wife, who was my girlfriend at that time, Jody Buren, came with me. You know, one of the things we found was having a great guide makes a huge difference. And this, we had Gunter Dykman with us, who's a great photographer in his own right, published gorgeous books on Australia, and was driving the car. This horse was the leader of the pack. He came out to check us out. And Gunter just put me in perfect position to make this picture with no autofocus. But a place called Rainbow Valley. I did my tour for the APA in Australia, and then I just toured the country. It's a place called Rainbow Valley where it never rains, and we just got incredibly lucky to get a full rainbow over the rock collection there. And you know, Australia, this was the second time I'd been back, and I just love the country. There's so much beauty there. It's just a photographer's paradise.
On that previous one, does anyone else see a silhouette of a face in the rock
Yep.
in the front?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I've seen that guy too.
And going back to the Verrazano picture, Joe Powereskin made a comment over on Facebook that you took the elevator. Kaplan would complain that you didn't climb the Verrazano.
Oh, he may well have complained, but I got a great position right in the middle in the front row by being the first one up there. So, and I think he would understand the need to get in position. That's Peter B. Kaplan, who I think John's
Yes.
referring to, who is known for climbing to high places and making, I think, one of the iconic pictures of the Statue of Liberty. He was hired to photograph it during the time when it was refurbished in, I think, 1986. And he put his camera, a super wide angle lens on a camera out on a really long stick, like a window washer stick or something, and did super wide angle pictures of the statue looking back to the city. They're really gorgeous stuff. And this is Uluru. It was, called Ayers Rock back then, but it is Uluru. And we drove there. We didn't fly in. You can fly in, but it's a sacred site for the Aboriginals, and you feel it. You feel the presence of this place. And it's, once again, it's one of the gifts of being a photographer. We drove and drove and drove from Alice Springs, and at one point, this rock appeared as though magically. And we were, I was actually thinking, I'll take a picture of it and we'll keep moving. We ended up spending a week there. It was hypnotic. It was addictive. It kept changing. Before the trip, actually, I called some people I knew who worked on Kodak, and I told them I was going there. And they sent me off with a brick of Kodachrome 200, which was another one of those special kind of magic films that I just loved. Really, okay for something like this. And this is the shot I think they ran in the ad, but I loved shooting people with it. It just had such a great tonal range. That's in the red center in Australia, and it is red, and it's so beautiful, and the sounds of it are so incredible. And this is an assembly. I put that road together with Ayers Rock, and it became an ad for Qantas.
As a sacred site, does that mean that no one climbs Ayers Rock?
Yeah, Lulu, sorry. Yes, we actually climbed it because it was perfectly legal and done back then. but it's you're no longer allowed to climb it. And you know, when you're there, you can feel its presence. It's just an astonishing kind of place.
It was only a couple of years ago that they finally acceded to the Aborigines and banned climbing. Although the weekend before the ban took place, it was like ants over all over there were climbers everywhere.
It's you feel it. It's one of those. It has its own charisma. You can understand why it's sacred to them, and they should make the rules there.
And Ayers Rock is the white man's name of it. It's Uluru.
Right, it's Uluru. This is the Pinnacles Desert in Western Australia. Once again, it was a little hard to get to. We were on a track, and we probably didn't bring adequate supplies for the trip we made, and we were very fortunate to kind of get there. But there's, you know, up in Darwin, Kakadu, the beauty there is just doesn't end. So I don't know when it was. Somebody else would know, but I was living on Mercer Street in the city. This weird guy, Michael Nula, called me up and said he was doing this program, Explorers of Light, and he wanted me to potentially use Canons and switch from Nikons. I've been shooting Nikons for years, and I was happy with them, and I actually had done some ads for them. So I met with Michael, and he showed me the cameras, and I loved them. They were just, you know, at that point, they felt like really a step ahead than anything I've been working with, although, you know, Nikons are fabulous too. But they just seemed great, and I was fortunate to get involved in that program. And they were doing a book on the explorers. So this was, you know, sitting at home, starts to snow, grab your camera, and this is the picture that they used in the book. This was an ad for AT&T, and, you know, once again, it's like, I think the headline was, "Funny, it doesn't look like a conference center," or something. And they were at this point initiating a way of conferencing photographs. But, you know, if you can look at this thing, there's a guy talking on a payphone. When was the last time you saw a payphone? And, you know, we've rigged a little light over it just to bring your eye to that point. We had a location scout find this for us. We're up in a cherry picker. And, you know, the Polaroids that we could see to test this were the size of a 35mm frame. So, but those series that we do, kind of like the Australia for myself, are fun also. This was a Alcoa annual report, and I'll show you a bunch of pictures later, but this was the cover, and, you know, the idea was just to make a picture. They were using aluminum for the frames of a lot of these cars. So in this case, I mounted a camera on top of the car on a ski rack. You know, we kind of did this in a low-tech way. There's yellow stripes in the back of this picture. That's 3M tape that we bought. We're in a parking lot. We wet down the parking lot. I'm driving probably at 4 miles an hour, releasing the shutter back and forth. And just, you know, we worked out where the sunset was going to be, and we pointed the car in the right direction. So we got that beautiful liquid light on the car. And, you know, if you picture this cut in half down the middle, that became a wrap cover for the annual report. And, you know, one of the fun things about this is although there was a designer with us, there's not an art director saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. And, you know, I don't like being told what to do. So I sometimes had a bit of trouble with art directors telling me what to do, and I kind of had to do it. But I always thought, geez, you hired me for the way I see, so why are you telling me what to do? And very often they were right and I was wrong. However, in this case, they just gave us words for themes in the annual report. And this was braking was a theme. So we put the stripe down on the ground, we had the traffic cones, we wet the car. And, you know, once again, there's no back of the camera to check to see if the amount of motion I'm doing is correct or not. So we just, you know, you shoot tons of pictures. I don't remember what the word was for this, but, you know, we got a water truck and we shot in the rain. And for this one, the word was cornering. The car's on a flatbed truck. I'm not strapped in, and I wish I had been because it was terrifying. And we were in an office park, so there was light bouncing between two glass buildings on either side. and that lights the car, lights the driver, and we do long exposures to get the motion. And then this one was the future. So those little yellow things in the middle of the road, we laid down, we're in a parking lot again, and that's just a car backed up to the camera and then driving off. And then some other pictures that didn't get used, but I had fun doing. So that is a picture that I made actually probably in the late 90s. I had a son. I was really starting to reevaluate what I was doing. You know, I don't know how old I was approaching 50, and I was being told by designers that they were looking for younger people. It was just, the stock world was ending. It was just getting complicated. So I started rethinking things. And, this will sort of be the end of the pictures that I have to show. But after this, really reevaluated, and my wife and I moved out of the city. A designer, art director asked me to shoot her wedding. I'd always said no. I thought that was toxic. I didn't want to do it. And I did it. It was a blast. And a friend asked Jody to shoot her son's bar mitzvah. And I was thinking, oh man, that's like, but we did it. And the pictures were amazing. The picture opportunities, people were on the happiest day of their lives. So that's where I'm going to leave this off here. But we sort of embarked on a whole new approach. Still shoot for myself, probably more so now than ever, but we moved into an events kind of approach. So there you have it. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. I really appreciate everybody coming by to take a look at these pictures today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's open it up for questions. You can type in the chat or you can unmute.
Can I chime in with a comment about shooting weddings?
Of course.
I always thought that, you know, it wasn't really beneath me. I have a lot of respect for wedding photographers. The very first thing I ever did for money was that a guy who lived across the backyard from me had a daughter who was getting married. I was about 13 years old, 14 years old. I had a Pentax H3V with a single 55mm lens and a single little flash unit. And the guy said, I'll give you $100 to photograph Holly's wedding. And I said, sure, great. I bought myself a roll of Technicolor. And I went to the wedding and I loaded the camera and I'm shooting pictures. I'm having a good time. And I realized this is like the longest roll of film I ever shot in my life. And I realized that it never caught on, you know? So I quickly opened the back of the camera, pushed it in the thing, wound it a couple of times. I saw the take-up spool move and I reshot everything. Shot 36 frames, got the cutting of the cake, worked out great. I almost died. Problem with shooting weddings is there's no reshoots.
Yeah.
You can't ask 300 people to fly back.
You know, when I said I thought weddings were toxic, I did think they were toxic. And then I got to shoot some and realized there were incredible days and so many picture opportunities. And that notion that, like, if you miss the picture, you don't get the picture. It's like, we get the picture and we get a picture. If we don't get the picture they had in their mind, we get a picture that hopefully is better, but that creates a memory of what it felt.
You can make some great pictures of weddings. I just wouldn't want to do it for a living.
It's hard work. So it's
very hard work.
Steve, I got to leave because I actually have PT, but I wanted to make a comment. I always found your photography mildly irritating because you fucking get the shot. You're like an odd mixture of Art Kane, Pete Turner, and Jay Maisel, with your own kind of look and spin. So you are yourself. You are kind of unique, and that's one of the things that I like about you. Not that I could identify, oh, that's a Steve Krongard shot. Art Kane at the time was pretty unique and different, but I really like the look and the work that you do. And so I always found your work mildly irritating because it was like, oh, fuck, he got that shot. So congratulations on actually making the change to shooting non-commercial. I haven't done commercial work for 20 years. And I have no fucking use for art directors or designers.
Well,
So anyway, thank you,
Thanks for
Steve.
that, Jeff. And I'm going to pick up on the art director comment. And if you got to go, man, nice seeing you.
Okay.
Good to see you,
Thanks,
Jeff.
John.
Thanks.
I worked with some art directors who are absolutely wonderful people.
Yes, they are.
Friends to this day. You know, the part that actually I think I know drove me crazy, and maybe you too, is the art buyers, who are also sometimes, I'm sure, very nice people, but the negotiations can be pretty brutal. So take care, Jeff.
Steve, I have a question.
Yeah, go.
Hey, hi.
Hi.
Great, beautiful work.
Thank you.
I've been following your career for years. You offered me a job at Pete's studio in the late 70s. And unfortunately, fortunately, at the time, it was inopportune for me to work at that level, at that kind of pay. So I didn't accept it. And but I appreciate that. And I really think I met you, you interviewed me, and I've been following your work since. And congratulations, it's been
Thanks.
terrific.
What's your name?
Stavros Panopoulos.
Okay, Stavros. Well, nice to see you again.
Well, there's one more thing.
The pay at Pete's studio, I started at $50 a week. And but he bought me lunch every day and shivas every night. So
well, listen, I totally get that, and it just wasn't. The funny thing is, you know, it took years for me to get for you to hire me. I applied a couple of times to your predecessor before you, whose name escapes me, and anyway, so a couple of years passed, and at that point I'd been assisting. I was about to start shooting, and you called me up. And anyway, so thanks a lot. But the question I want to ask you is how, looking at your jobs, some of them are just enormous setups in terms of lighting and production. But you do a lot of personal photography also. In terms of switching from a high production job to just being you, is that something that comes easily to you, or do you still have? I know for myself, after being in the business for 40 years plus, I still overwork even the most casual job sometimes, or the most casual shot. I'll overwork it. But yourself, like, you know, is it easy, or you follow my question? Is it clear?
You know, there's a big difference between taking my camera out for a stroll and seeing like stripes on a building or something and banging out a few frames, to bringing 3 generators and a team of 15 people out to the desert. You know, I love them both, and I really love the big productions. You know, I will say some of my assistants over the years would think I took it too far, but we always bought way too much equipment, and I love getting into those things. And then, you know, I love taking a vacation and bringing my cameras, and it's not really a vacation.
Well, you know, as you know, following the photographers that I liked, and Pete was one of my favorites indeed. I remember we seeing a behind the scenes feature back in print, back in the old days. I think it was with you doing a Kohler ad with a toilet on a highway or something like that, and what was involved. And those days are over. I mean, everything is done in elements now, and but it was really a thrilling time to be working. And back when I was assisting in the late 70s, it was just wonderful, you know, what we would go through, you know, to create a shot, because it all had to happen in camera. And it was great.
Yeah, well, when you think about it, how much has changed, it's in one career, it's mind-boggling. From film from Kodachrome to the E6 films became very good, to Polaroid backs, to, I'm sure I'm going to miss things, autofocus, to the internet, you know, to digital. I mean, there's just so much change that's been the constant.
I don't mean to monopolize you, but how often did you work with with larger format than 35 millimeter, or were you strictly a 35 millimeter guy? Well,
I would say that when I was, you know, when my studio was up and running and things were going good, maybe 5% of the time. Very little.
Well, thanks a lot. It's been great. Thank you for the time.
Hey, Steve. Peter here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who's there? I'm sorry.
Peter.
Peter Bennett.
Oh, Peter.
How you doing?
Hey, great, man. Peter Bennett, man.
That was a lot of fun. Obviously, a real trip down memory lane. So familiar with so many of those pictures, and great to hear the stories behind some of the ones I wasn't sure. You know, it just really, you know, dawned on me how much I learned from you, and how much I still apply what I learned from you today when I shoot. You know, just the small things like renting a dark car, but even just all the little things, and really, if you were to kind of encapsulate that in anything, it was like you taught me how to be a problem solver. That every job is unique, and if you don't approach every job from the idea that it is unique and has its unique challenges, you're going to not really be a creative person. And every job, you push the limits, and those speedotrons, they were heavy and all that stuff. But really what it led to was, if you don't go the extra mile, you're not going to get the great shots. And you taught me that. And, that it's still kind of applying in my work is really remarkable. I just kind of wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you. And I think the very first picture I saw of yours was the Concorde. I saw it in some magazine. I think it was an article about you. And from that picture, I kind of called you up, and you were the first photographer I asked for a job.
Wow.
And it worked out well.
So Peter, that's Peter Bennett, man. He worked with me for a couple of years. I'm not sure how long, Peter, but I learned a lot from Peter too along the way. He was like we'd go into battle together, and it was like we were equals. And we, as I was actually pulling some pictures for this talk, I came across, because very often I would use whoever was available as a model. I came across Peter Bennett as a dentist in an office. I came across Peter Bennett as a scientist looking through a microscope that we made in the studio out of like probably toilet paper tubes or something, but it looked real. And then there was a picture where we were shooting the Penthouse Pet of the Year at Liberty Point on a windy day. And there's Peter Bennett holding the light in the wind.
Yeah.
It's fun. Well, thank you, Peter, for that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve, man. I was wondering about the modeling shots I did for you. It was the highlight.
I think I have a release on those, Peter, so don't be getting any ideas.
Hey, Steve, are you from Newton, Massachusetts? And
That's correct.
Jody Buren. Okay, I'll hit add friend. Thank you.
You bet.
It's Barbara. I just wanted to say hi. I have to leave. It was wonderful to see your work. I'm sorry I have to go, but it's nice to see you too.
Thank you, Barbara.
Congratulations.
Very nice to see you.
Thanks for stopping in, Barbara. It's always good to see you too.
That's Barbara Bordnick, the great photographer.
Steve, I sent an invitation out to a few people, and Heisler contacted me to say that he's teaching up at Syracuse, but he wanted me to tell you he says hello. He doesn't get out of class until 3 o'clock, and he'll see you on YouTube.
That sounds great. He's a lovely guy, he's a great photographer, and I've learned a lot from him. And in fact, he was at our wedding, and we have a gorgeous picture that Greg dragged us off and made of us standing on the side of a river.
Didn't the two of you go to Australia together?
Well, I met Greg at the Day in the Life of Australia in 1981.
Right.
He was getting a name for himself at that point, and he'd done some beautiful things in life. And we both stayed after the project. I actually wanted to stay in Sydney for a week, and Rick let me stay set me up with a friend of his, Prudence, staying at our house when Greg came by. That's his first wife. Met her, they went off on a date, and they got married a week later.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, if people go through the archives of the conversations, Greg Heisler's been on, Barbara Bordnick's been on, Rick Smolin's been on. So they're all good ones to go back and look at if you get a chance.
Yes, I would think they would be really interesting.
Jack,
Hey,
did
Steve,
you have
I just
something?
wanted to no, I just wanted to say hey too. Fun seeing the stuff, Steve.
Thank you, Jack. Nice to see you.
Haven't seen you in a long time.
Yes, sir. It's been a while.
So what moved you out to Park City?
Well, so, I'd mentioned we moved into shooting weddings and bar mitzvahs and events. And we had fortunately tapped into a crowd that loved us, and things were going really well and have been for quite some time. The pandemic hit and all our jobs were canceled. And I was nearing the end because that work is so physical. But I was partners with my wife, Jody. She wanted to keep going. We had a studio manager, Hillary C., who is a brilliant photographer also, who we were booking. We had crew we were booking. Anyway, everything got canceled. We canceled everything. We had to cancel the crew we had booked. It was a big pain in the neck. And then everybody wanted to rebook. and we rebooked. Nobody knew what was going on. And then everybody canceled again. And there were negotiations about retainers. And we said, you know what? We had been planning on a move out here gradually over the years. But we said, let's wrap it up. Let's sell the house and move to Park City. And
Nice.
we did. And I'm not looking back. It's beautiful out here. And the personal shooting is just, there's a whole new environment to have
Great.
fun.
Are you doing
Ian.
Are you doing any shooting out there with Jody?
We're trying to avoid it actually as best as we can. And it's not because it's being with Jody. It's just, you know, somebody asked me what I would charge to shoot their family. And it's not a Park City price. It's a New York price. And I said, you know what? I know I'd met the guy who's a really nice guy. I said, I'll do it for no charge. But then for 3 days, I was obsessing about the shoot. I was checking out locations. I was checking out locations different times a day. The day of the shoot, the weather looked like it was going to turn bad. We changed the timing. The pictures worked out, and the wind was howling, and I lit them, of course, with mountains in the background. And it turned out to be a great shot, but it was like, boy, that really wasn't fun. You know, it was just like, you know, the hour shoot took me days to just get set, find a location. You know, I can't just walk up and make a picture. So, you know, that situation has repeated itself a couple of times. So I'm not saying no to assignments, but I'm saying we're saying no to parties. We're saying no to events.
How about a gallery?
Well, I'm starting on a whole new body of work out here. So at some point I could see showing those pictures, but not yet.
Nice. Ian, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I have a question first. I think your Kodachrome work is well, all of your work is absolutely tremendous. I just
Thank you.
really enjoy the Kodachrome. Have you found something in digital that gives you that image that you got from Kodachrome?
No, I haven't. And I think maybe as I'm getting older, I'm mellowing out a little bit. You know, I used to, and I learned this from Pete, take my work in Kodachrome and then duplicate it in Kodachrome. And it would get more contrasty, the colors would get more saturated. You know, I was just tweaking every little thing. And of course, everybody still tweaks in, you know, Lightroom or Photoshop. You know, we've all become computer operators mostly, but no, it's a different palette now, and I'm just going with it.
Well, great to meet you. This is absolutely tremendous.
Thank you.
You've now become one of the people that I've met who are survivors of Mueller. So,
Hang on.
and you're still here. That's wonderful.
Yes. Thank you, Ian.
It's a bit of a battle, isn't it?
Yes.
It keeps you on your toes.
If you're doing events and stuff now, have you joined PPA?
No, actually, I've stopped doing events, but I did about 15 or 20 years of them. And I was a member of PPA, and I didn't find it that helpful, honestly. And I also, you know, for a while, I just kind of joined because I wanted to contribute as a member, but I wanted to get insurance through them. Their insurance was not appropriate for the type of business we were running. It just wasn't a good fit.
Yeah, their indemnification insurance is probably the only thing really worth it for you, and that was worth it. It was part of membership. They're self-insured on that. Just curious. That's all.
No.
I had a lot of
looking into that, and I don't think the numbers were high enough. And what we needed a comprehensive policy that they couldn't cover.
Oh no, for anything else other than basically it was errors and omissions is what they covered. They never called it that, but that's what it was. But no, for equipment or liability, you needed to get your own insurance.
You know, I wish I remembered.
And one of the problems they had is they tried getting insurance for the whole association, went to Washington to lobby, but you have to get insurance in each state individually. And the only way to get a national insurance, which is what they wanted, is you have to lobby Congress. And it's, you know, I learned from doing this because I was part of the lobbying when they did that. United Auto Workers is one of the few nationwide insurance things that you can get. Their union had enough political pull. But Yeah, insurance was a problem.
Well, I have great insurance now for not that much money, and I don't remember their name, but if anyone has questions about insurance, you can, send me an email or a message, and I will get that information for you.
Yeah, it's called Medicare. Hey, Steve, will you keep in touch with the other now 4 photographers that assisted Pete? I know
So
that.
like Eric Miola,
Well, Edgeworth is gone.
Anthony.
But Arezu, Michelle Tereshikov.
You got Eric Miola.
Yeah.
You've got Ted Kaufman.
Oh, I didn't know about Kaufman.
You have Lee McElfresh. You have who we saw earlier in the desert. You have Dave Merzen. Rob Atkins is with him. Paul Harris is a great guy. He's a brilliant photographer, and he worked with us. He was pretty much a freelance assistant at Pete's studio.
Who, Arezu?
Arisu was. And when I opened my studio, he assisted me. And he was a guy who had kind of these street smarts from the very beginning. I don't know if you guys know his work. Paul Arisu, he's a really good photographer and a really sweet guy. But he had these street smarts where the second we hired him as a freelancer, he knew what to do. He got the job done. And he wasn't sticking around for 2 years to be an assistant. He went off and kind of hit a home run right away when he opened his studio.
He still had a studio. Last time I saw him, he still had a studio 2 years ago, shooting commercial in the city. It was funny because one of the last studios I had, I was looking for studio space. He was looking at the same time. And we compared notes on different spaces we'd seen. And I ran into him and he said, "Oh, I found a studio." I said, "Oh, me too. Where'd you get it?" He said, 31 West 27th. I said, 31 West? Wait a minute. That's where I got a studio. What floor? 7th floor. I'm on the 7th floor. Which space did you get? And he was down the hall for me for the last space I had.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a very good guy.
Small world.
Yep, sure is.
Hey, Steve. This is Eric.
Eric.
I worked at Maine Photographic Workshops from 2005 to 2007. And I was wondering what years you worked at there and what classes you worked. You taught.
I started in the first time there was probably 1981. And I did a lot 80s and 90s. And I came back occasionally after 2000. Most of the workshops that I did were just about my work, about how to monetize your work, about technically how to make pictures, about how to find your own voice. In later years, I did some technical lighting things, which weren't as successful just because, I was better at doing it than teaching it. But, mostly the 95% of the workshops I did were just, based on what I did, commercial work and whatever. And, one of the things when I changed from commercial work to event work, I was influenced by some of my students in Maine because I was teaching up there, and we get a class of 10 or 15 students come up, and they'd be driving like Lexuses and Jaguars, and I was driving up in my 8-year-old Ford Explorer that I left her on gear, and I just started to think, boy, these people who are taking my workshop are making more money than I am, and maybe it's time to rethink some of this stuff. It was not just the money, but the workshops were actually amazing in that I met so many wonderful people up there when I was there. Every week I taught there, there'd be 4 or 5 other people that I met there. I mean, it's just a really, really long list of people. And it's seeing their work every night. It's just invaluable.
That's one of the reasons I took the job at the workshops there, is to meet other photographers, because I wasn't a professional photographer myself. So I really enjoyed seeing other people presentations and stuff. And I do really enjoy seeing your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Steve, don't sweat the car thing. No, one of my best friends for a long time was a guy that a fellow by the name of Jake Raj.
Yeah.
And Jake used to drive around in his beat up old Dodge Dart. And I said to him, Jake, don't you get a better car? You know, you can afford it. He says, yeah, but I don't feel guilty about climbing up on the roof and standing on the car and denting the roof. And that was, you know, there's a charm to beat up old cars.
No question about it. Absolutely.
You don't want to do that with your new Lexus, you know.
No question. If I could get
Joe's
a
thing.
start, I'd be thrilled. Yes.
What was that?
Yes.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm from South Africa, and I've had this book since 1987,
Uh-huh.
and I remembered your name because you were like one of the dudes that I used to turn to for inspiration when I was a photo student.
Awesome.
That's like 34 years ago, and here you are, Steve Krongard.
Incredible.
I forgot about the silver book.
The silver book was an ASM.
That was ASMP.
Yeah.
Right. Book for advertising.
This
Thank you,
was
Raul.
Book 5.
And you know, we all spent a lot of money on advertising back in those days, and ASMB tried to do it in a user-friendly way for photographers. And the book was fun, and you know, it gave me a format to kind of show my own work and see where it would lead.
And the other book that you mentioned before was The Explorers of Light.
Right, you are.
With a bunch of people that have been on the show here.
Well, Michael deserves a lot of credit for putting together an amazing group of people. The other actually advertising book back then that was the big one was the Black Book.
Yeah.
And there was also American Showcase.
Right. What the gold book?
Which is really funny.
Yeah,
I
gold.
advertised once in American Showcase, and just a few months ago, I was in a used bookstore, and that particular one, number 10, was available as
Really? Did you grab it?
in the store. Yeah.
Steve, do you realize how many people you influenced outside of this country? I mean, here's a guy from South Africa.
That's
I'm
cool.
sure that there are others, you know, Japan and, you know, Europe, Australia, New Zealand.
Well, it's a great feeling to think that pictures that I did might have influenced someone in a positive way. It's people like them. That's great. It's a good feeling. As we all know, it's a lot of work to get there.
You're a good guy, Krongard.
Thank you, Michael. So are you.
No.
All right.
No. Don't blow my cover.
Too many of us know Nuller.
Yes.
Sure. No.
Hey, Newler.
Hey.
Hey. So I'm driving, so I don't have my video on, but I left in such a hurry that I didn't get to say "fuck you, Newler."
I love it.
Perfect timing.
Is that a tradition or?
That was seaweed.
Yeah, I can see it.
Oh.
That's his traditional sign-off.
Yes.
Hey, Jack, how many of the EOLs do you still keep in touch with?
AOLs?
Explorers of Light,
Explorers of
EOLs.
Light,
EOLs.
yeah.
Are you asking me or Steve?
Krongard.
Jack.
Oh.
Jack.
Oh, you said Jack.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine. You know, not many. Well, Douglas Kirkland, I guess, you know, through Francoise.
Mhm.
But, you know, one of the things about being a photographer, it's a solitary thing. And, you know, I don't say that to complain. We all go to our own studios or homes and we sit at our computer and make pictures. And it's hard to stay in touch. Eric Miola, you know, I see from time to time. I went to his opening when his book of weather storms was published.
Uh-huh.
But not tons of people.
How far away are you from? You remember David Stecklin?
I do. I think he passed away years ago, didn't he?
Yeah. But he has, or still, I hope he still has. He's got 5 kids, and he's got this huge ranch in Utah, where they did a lot of the Marlboro commercials, and also he's got a river running through it that has the best trout fishing in the area. How close are you to where Stecklin's ranch is?
You know, I have no idea. And There's a lot of open country here and there's a lot of ranches. I do remember his work and thought a guy was a really good shooter, but I didn't know him.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're about an hour and a half in. I think we can start wrapping up now. Is there any other questions or comments people have? Or Steve, you have any last words you want to share with folks here?
I really just want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening. Appreciate it. It's been fun.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, John. Thanks, Newler, because for the, you've assembled a great group of guys that all kind of were really good and nice people. There weren't too many assholes in the group.
And just remember that on Monday, we're going to be on at 4 p.m. Pacific and 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Steve, tell Jody I love her. Big hug and a kiss. And we miss you guys out here.
Thanks, Michael. I will definitely pass that on.
You enjoy and relax. You deserve it.
I'll enjoy. I'm not that great at relaxing, but I'll do my best.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming on. It's absolutely great.
Thank you.
Okay, let me shut us down.
Thank you.